Have you ever found yourself drawn to an idea that promises, instant transformation, like a sudden aha moment that changes everything, but, well, with minimal effort? In our world, it's so fast-paced, right? Information just washes over us constantly, and there's this deep, almost primal desire for quick fixes, especially with
Mhm.
understanding ourselves. Spirituality, we're just bombarded daily with data, so many conflicting opinions, different teachings, and it's incredibly easy to get caught up in something that sounds, well, profoundly liberating, but also really simple. But, while that simplicity is appealing, sometimes it can mask a deeper truth, maybe more nuanced one that needs a bit more patience, maybe a willingness to look beyond just the surface. Today on the deep dive, our mission is really to peel back some layers on these modern interpretations of ancient traditions.
Hmm.
We're focusing specifically on Advaita Vedanta. It's this profound philosophy, right? At its heart, it teaches non-duality, this revolutionary idea that ultimate reality, Brahman, is one, and that our individual self is essentially identical to that ultimate reality. We're going to shine a light on what's often called Neo-Advaita and explore some of the potential pitfalls that come with chasing that instant enlightenment idea. Our goal is to pull out the most important insights from the sources you've shared with us, helping you, our listener, really get the difference between genuine spiritual practice and maybe just intellectual concepts, or worse, like outright spiritual bypassing. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's get to the heart of it.
Yes, and I think it's important to acknowledge right from the start that digging into these spiritual teachings, especially when it involves critiquing popular ideas, it can feel a bit provocative maybe. But let me assure you, my intention here, it's purely out of love and a deep respect for anyone genuinely seeking. It's really about clarifying misunderstandings that can, unfortunately, sometimes lead people astray. Ultimately, it's about helping individuals navigate their path with more clarity, more effectiveness, and hopefully authentic transformation. You see, Hindi philosophy and Advaita Vedanta within it has this long, really rich history of internal debate, of rigorous intellectual inquiry. For nearly 1,000 years, Advaita has been in robust discussions with other schools of thought, even profound traditions like Buddhism. And this historical back and forth, it's not a sign of weakness, not at all. It's actually a healthy, vital process. It strengthens teachings, refines them over time. It ensures ideas are rigorously tested, deeply understood, and actually impactful in practice. So we're approaching this discussion in that same spirit. It's a thoughtful inquiry meant to enhance understanding for everyone.
That's a really helpful way to frame it. This idea of constant refinement, not just fixed dogma, it really highlights that historical depth you're talking about. And when we look at how this plays out today, especially with something like Neo-Advaita, well, it starts to make sense why it's gained such traction. Can you sort of paint a picture of its main characteristics? What makes it so attractive, particularly now?
Absolutely. The surface appeal is, well, it's undeniable. And it's almost perfectly tailored for the modern mind, which, as you said, is always looking for efficiency, for shortcuts, even in spirituality. Faced with all this complexity, these constant demands, the promise of immediate, seemingly effortless enlightenment, it's incredibly seductive. You'll often hear these hallmark phrases, things like, there is no one here, or there's nothing to do, or maybe no self became realized. These statements, on the surface, they sound profoundly liberating, don't they? They seem to offer this easy path to understanding, promising an end to suffering without needing, significant effort or discipline or traditional practice.
Right, like you found the ultimate hack.
Exactly. For many seekers, encountering these ideas can feel like hitting the spiritual jackpot. Imagine you've struggled for years, maybe with meditation, or felt burdened by complex disciplines. And then someone tells you, it's already here. There's nothing you need to do to get it. It creates this immediate, huge psychological release, a feeling of having finally cracked the code. And that initial rush, it can be intoxicating. It can lead people to think they've found the ultimate easy way out of suffering. But unfortunately, this can also sometimes foster a sense of, well, intellectual superiority. Maybe even a subtle judgment towards others who are diligently following more traditional practice-heavy paths, viewing them as somehow misguided or still stuck in illusion because they haven't gotten it yet, haven't realized the ultimate truth. It's almost like enlightenment becomes another product to be quickly consumed.
Okay, so that initial appeal is clear. But as we dig deeper, this critical point emerges about how that seemingly simple approach can actually have unintended, maybe even harmful consequences. Our sources really point to this major pitfall, spiritual bypassing. Can you shed some light on what exactly spiritual bypassing is and why it's considered potentially damaging?
Yes, spiritual bypassing. It's a really critical concept to grasp here, and it can be quite subtle. At its core, it's using these absolute spiritual truths like all is one or there is no self to essentially avoid dealing with your very real personal suffering, your psychological issues, your emotional challenges, the stuff you experience in the relative day-to-day world. It's a very clever, often unconscious defense mechanism.
So instead of working through it, you just slap a spiritual label on it.
Precisely. Instead of actually processing or resolving difficult emotions or trauma or challenging life situations, one might just intellectually dismiss them. For instance, someone might say, oh, but in boundless awareness, I'm suffering, or in boundless awareness, I'm angry. They intellectualize the experience away, trying to distance themselves from it using grand concepts.
But the feeling is still there, right?
Absolutely. While it's true that from the ultimate perspective, our true nature is boundless awareness, we still live and experience life in this relative reality. We have bodies, minds, emotions, all relative. That intellectualization, that sort of verbal sleight of hand, it doesn't actually resolve the suffering or the anger or the pain you're feeling right here, right now. It just sweeps it under the rug. And under the rug, it continues to fester. What's maybe even more insidious is that spiritual bypassing can become a subtle form of spiritual narcissism. One's proclaimed enlightened status or intellectual grasp of non-duality can become just another identity for the ego, ironically reinforcing the very self it claims to transcend. It's a way to feel superior while avoiding the messy, often uncomfortable work of genuine self-integration.
Wow. And you mentioned actual harm.
Yes, the genuine harm it can cause is something I've observed, and it's quite stark. There's even this phenomenon now of non-duality recovery groups.
Recovery groups from spiritual teachings.
Think about that. People needing to recover from the adverse effects of teachings that were meant to be liberating. Instead, for some, they actually exacerbated mental or emotional distress. Why? Because if you're told there's nothing to do or no one here, while you're still experiencing very real egoic suffering, anger, fear, confusion, it creates this profound internal conflict, a cognitive dissonance that can be truly destabilizing.
That makes sense. It's like being told the fire isn't real while you're still feeling the heat.
Exactly. Now, traditional Advaita Vedanta, in stark contrast to this Neo-Advaita approach, explicitly acknowledges both the ultimate truth, that highest reality of non-duality, and the relative truth, which is our lived experienced reality. Both are important. While the ultimate truth is profound and unchanging, we live our lives in the relative. We have relative bodies, minds, we experience relative suffering, joy, challenges. Neglecting this relative aspect, ignoring our psychological and emotional realities, makes spiritual understanding impractical. It becomes ineffective for actually solving real-world suffering. It's like having a map to the absolute peak of Mount Everest, but refusing to acknowledge the path, the climb, the weather, the need for oxygen, believing that just knowing about the peak is enough. True liberation includes both understanding the peak and skillfully navigating the terrain to get there.
That distinction between ultimate and relative seems absolutely crucial then. So if Neo-Advaita does cherry pick, what's the specific piece they often leave out? The part that bridges that gap between the ultimate concept and the relative experience. Which leads to the question, how did we get so far from the teachings of the very masters Neo-Advaita often claims as its foundation? Let's maybe peel back another layer and look at people like Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj and Sri Ramana Maharshi. They weren't preaching this instant practice-free path, were they?
You've absolutely hit the core of the misunderstanding there. Yes, these titans of spiritual realization have often been selectively interpreted. Their profound teachings get stripped of essential context, especially as they became popular in the West. Let's take Nisargadatta Maharaj first. Many people encounter his incredibly direct, absolute statements and mistakenly assume he just arrived at realization effortlessly, like a pure intellectual flash. But that couldn't be further from the truth.
Okay, so what was his actual journey like?
Nisargadatta Maharaj met his guru, Sri Siddhartha Maharaj, when he was 33. And what followed wasn't some instant download. It was almost 3 years of dedicated, quite intense spiritual practice, what we call sadhana. His guru gave him very specific transformative instructions. The core instruction was, sit with the feeling I am. This was his primary meditation, a deep, constant absorption in just the raw, unadorned sense of being, of I amness, before any labels or concepts get attached. He was told to stay with this feeling, let it permeate his whole being until it became his only reality. But it wasn't just silent sitting. It was complemented by daily devotional songs, bhajans, acts of worship and gratitude multiple times a day.
So meditation and devotion.
Yes, and what's truly remarkable is Nisargadatta's unwavering devotion to his guru. He continued these daily bhajans right up until the day he died, decades after his profound self-realization. This shows a deep, lifelong commitment to sadhana, born from love and gratitude, not just as a means to an end. This practice of sitting with the feeling I am wasn't casual for him. He meditated on it every spare moment, constantly absorbed in it for years alongside the bhajans. Later, he would recommend devotion and other practices to seekers who came to him. And he was actually quite critical of purely intellectual knowledge, stressing the need for the mind to be purified, to be made fit for self-realization. What's also fascinating is that he continued living as a simple shopkeeper for 13 years after his realization, fully engaged in the world, before he even started taking disciples. This shows a deep integration of his realization into everyday life. It wasn't some abstract concept detached from reality. It was a profound shift in his being, manifesting in his actions.
13 years, that's quite a long time to just integrate.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it?
No.
This is why his powerful quote is so vital. The fruit falls suddenly, but the ripening takes time.
Ah, right. I've heard that one.
It's key. Enlightenment, the realization of our true nature. Yes, it can happen in an instant. A sudden flash of insight, a moment of recognition. That's the fruit falling suddenly. But what comes before that instant? The ripening. And what is the ripening? It's the dedicated spiritual practice, the long preparation that purifies and prepares the mind to actually receive that insight and, importantly, to stabilize it.
Can you give us an analogy for that? It sounds important.
Let's try this. Imagine my goal is to stand on the summit of Mount Everest. The actual moment of stepping onto that summit, that's instantaneous, right? That's the fruit falling suddenly. But think about everything that has to happen before that single step. Months, maybe years of intense physical training, building endurance, strength, acclimatizing the body, gathering specialized gear, planning the logistics, traveling thousands of miles, then trekking for days through difficult terrain just to reach base camp. And then the arduous climb itself, establishing camps along the way, facing risks.
Right. None of that is the summit itself.
Exactly. None of those steps. The training, the travel, the trek, the climb, or the final goal of standing on the summit. But they are absolutely indispensable. Without them, you simply don't reach the goal. They are the long preparation, the ripening. So if someone just said, look, I don't want to do all that training and trekking, just tell me about the summit itself, I could describe the summit. But they still need all those preparatory steps to actually get there. Self-inquiry as a direct path, it's maybe like that final ascent towards the summit. It's crucial. But without the training, trekking, and acclimatization, which are all the other spiritual practices, it often won't yield results for the vast majority of seekers. Nisargadatta himself practiced intensely for 3 years. For almost everyone, that dedicated practice is essential.
That Everest analogy really makes it crystal clear. It's the whole journey, the preparation, that makes the arrival possible and meaningful. Okay, so let's turn to Ramana Maharshi. He's maybe even more widely known for self-inquiry, often held up as a prime example of direct realization, sometimes presented as someone who didn't need practice. What was his actual path, and how does it connect to this ripening idea?
Ramana Maharshi is indeed one of those truly rare spiritual giants. At just 16, he had this unique, completely spontaneous self-inquiry experience. It happened during a profound event where he felt like he was dying. He felt death coming on, but instead of fear taking over, he intensely inquired, what is dying? Is it the body? Am I the body? What is this I that seems to face death? This intense, spontaneous self-investigation led him directly to a profound realization. He was not the body, not the mind, but the unchanging infinite self. It was an extraordinary spontaneous awakening, seemingly with very little or maybe no formal prior practice as we'd usually define it.
So he was one of the exceptions, maybe.
You could say that. A rare case. After that experience, age 16, he left home for the sacred mountain Arunachala. He lived very simply, often in caves, just absorbed in his realization. People were naturally drawn to his profound presence, his silence, his wisdom. Eventually an ashram grew around him. But it's crucial to clarify, Ramana Maharshi never claimed to be a guru in the traditional sense. He didn't set up a formal lineage with successors. He simply lived his enlightened life. People gathered, he answered questions, gave advice. His silence itself was a teaching. But it wasn't about creating an institution in the way many spiritual lineages do.
Okay, but what about the practice aspect? Did he advocate it for others, even if his own path was so direct?
Yes, and this is the crucial point that often gets lost in those simplified, instant enlightenment narratives. While Ramana Maharshi did teach self-inquiry, who am I, he consistently emphasized that it was really meant for the right mind, meaning a mind that was already prepared, already purified, already subtle enough through other spiritual practices. He deeply understood that most people aren't like him, ready for that spontaneous insight that bypasses years of groundwork. For the vast majority, the mind needs ripening. just like the fruit needs time on the vine before it's ready to fall.
And did he specify what that ripening involves?
He did, very clearly. In his profound, concise work called Upadesa, which means Essence of Instructions, he outlines 4 essential spiritual practices. These aren't just suggestions. They are foundational disciplines to ripen the mind for true realization. First, Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, selfless service. This isn't just about charity work. It's about transforming all your daily activities, your job, chores, interactions into an offering, purifying your intentions by detaching from the results, the fruits of your labor. The action itself becomes the focus, not just the outcome. Second, Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, cultivating profound love, surrender, seeing the divine in everything, opening the heart, dissolving that sense of separation through love. Third, Raja Yoga, the royal yoga, focused on meditation and mind control. Practices like controlling the breath, pranayama, concentration, dharana, to still the restless mind, develop focus, and access inner stillness. And fourth, finally, Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. This is where self-inquiry, the who am I investigation fits in, is the direct path of intellectual discrimination and self-investigation to realize your true nature.
So self-inquiry is actually the 4th step in that model.
In that specific framework, yes. It implies a progression, or at least a foundation needed for it to be truly effective for most. These are all foundational in traditional Vedanta. Let's use another analogy. Imagine the goal is to deadlift, say, 500 pounds, about 225 kilos. A massive weight.
Okay, definitely can't just walk up and do that.
Right, most people can't. It requires extensive long-term preparation. You need the right diet, enough sleep, consistent strength training, lifting progressively lighter weights over months, years, to build the muscle, the bone density, the nervous system strength. All those preparatory things, the diet, the sleep, the progressive lifting, they aren't the final lift itself, but they are absolutely essential to achieve it. They are the ripening process for your body and mind, making them capable of handling the stress of that ultimate lift.
Got it. The preparation enables the final act.
Precisely. So, just like Nisargadatta, Ramana Maharshi, despite how he's sometimes portrayed, unequivocally advocated for a comprehensive path of spiritual practice to prepare the mind for ultimate realization. They understood that while the fruit falls suddenly for almost everyone, the groundwork, the ripening, takes time, discipline, and dedication. Direct self-inquiry, for most, is the peak of a much broader, integrated spiritual journey, not a standalone shortcut.
That completely reframes their teachings, putting the practice element front and center. It really lays bare the full context, which makes you wonder even more. If these great masters emphasize such a holistic approach, the need for practice, how did their profound, nuanced teachings get, well, distilled into something so different? Almost the opposite of their original intent. Where did this shortcut idea, this no practice needed philosophy, really come from and start spreading?
That's an excellent and crucial question, and it brings us to a very significant figure in this modern spiritual landscape. H.W.L. Punja, who was often called Papaji by his devotees. Papaji was a devotee of Ramana Maharshi, and he played a truly pivotal role in this shift towards what became Neo-Advaita. After his time with Ramana, he started teaching, and he attracted predominantly Western students. This was in the latter half of the 20th century when many Westerners were going to India seeking, direct spiritual paths, often outside traditional religious structures.
Okay, so he had Ramana's background, but something changed.
Yes, this is where the critical divergence happened. Papaji took Ramana's core teaching of self-inquiry, that direct investigation, who am I? But, and this is key, he actively discouraged and often dismissed all of their spiritual practices. He famously told his students to stop doing all your spiritual practice. He even suggested that self-inquiry shouldn't be treated like a meditation or a long discipline. Instead, it should be a single, decisive act. Do it once, do it properly, and be done.
Wow, that's quite a departure. Stop all practice.
It is. Imagine the psychological impact of that. You've perhaps been seeking for years, maybe feeling burdened or unsuccessful with practices, and then an authority figure tells you, stop it all. You can get there instantly with nothing to do. Especially for Westerners, often conditioned to seek efficiency and immediate results, this created an immense, almost addictive sense of relief from effort. It made his teachings incredibly appealing, almost viral. But in doing so, it bypassed the foundational work. The purification and preparation of the mind that Ramana himself emphasized was necessary for most people. And here's a crucial detail our sources highlight. Ramana Maharshi never actually authorized Papaji to teach. This selective interpretation, this dismissal of other practices, it was Papaji's own approach, a distillation that resonated powerfully but, well, lost critical context and balance.
Okay, so he simplified it, maybe oversimplified it, and took out the preparation part.
That's a fair way to put it. And what happened next was the rapid proliferation of Neo-Advaita. Papaji's Western students, having absorbed this simplified practice-averse message, brought these teachings back to America, to Europe. This led to a surge of self-proclaimed Neo-Advaita teacher Caesars. Our sources mention figures like Tony Parsons and Jim Newman as prominent examples who really amplified this message. And this resulted in what I sometimes call the super neo-Advaita phenomena. You hear this constant, almost mantra-like repetition of phrases, no one's here, nothing to do, no teacher, no student. And while these statements point towards the ultimate, absolute truth and sound incredibly profound, they become impractical and frankly confusing when you try to apply them to lived experience. They describe the destination beautifully, but offer little to no guidance on how to navigate the actual journey, the relative reality where we still experience suffering, anger, desire, confusion, all the challenges of being human. They lack that bridge.
And you mentioned you had some personal experience with this path yourself.
Yes, I did. I can speak to this directly because I was once very, very attracted to this easy path of Neo-Advaita myself. My background was initially in studying Buddhism, which is very practice-oriented, right speech, right action, right concentration, lots of meditation. Then I heard these Neo-Advaita ideas. Who is the one meditating? Who is doing this? And I honestly thought, wow, jackpot. I've been wasting my time, all this Buddhist practice. The appeal of instant enlightenment was just overwhelming. I genuinely thought, what am I doing with all this effort? I'm enlightened now. There's nothing to do. It really felt like I'd finally understood everything. It could just be.
What happened then? Did it work?
Well, this intellectual understanding immediately created this sense of perceived enlightenment. But it quickly led to something quite troubling. Judgment. A lot of judgment. I started judging others who I saw as less aware or spiritual. Religious people, for example, I dismissed them thinking, oh, they just don't get it. They're worshiping some external God when God is their own self. Or I'd see people who seem genuinely happy, maybe in their ignorance of these ultimate truths. And I think, well, they think they're happy, but they're not really happy. They're still bound by illusion. There was this definite feeling that I was somehow better, more insightful, that I'd arrived somewhere others hadn't. It was, looking back, a very subtle but strong egoic identity built around being non-dual.
But the suffering didn't go away.
Exactly. Slowly, the disillusionment started creeping in. Despite my strong intellectual conviction, my personal suffering persisted. In boundless awareness, I was still getting intensely angry sometimes. In boundless awareness, I was still having very real, very egoic problems in my life. And this created a really profound, quite painful cognitive dissonance. I kept thinking, why? Why would these ancient, incredibly wise teachers talk so much about spiritual practice if it wasn't needed? They can't all be that clueless. These traditions have endured for millennia for a reason. This internal struggle, this deep sense of unease, it forced me to humbly reconsider everything. I thought, okay, you know what? Let's give traditional Advaita Vedanta a proper, dedicated go. Study it as it was traditionally taught, with emphasis on preparation and practice. So I started doing that, diving into the traditional teachings. And slowly, gradually, over several years, it all just started to fall into place. The missing context, the practical understanding, the holistic path, it all became clear. Like a complex puzzle finally being solved piece by piece. That's why I can say now, with real conviction, that if you're still experiencing significant suffering, anger, or deep dissatisfaction, while intellectually holding on to the idea that no one here, nothing to do, it's a very clear sign that the complete practical path isn't being followed. The map isn't the territory. Knowing about the destination isn't the same as arriving there, living from there.
That personal journey really drives home the point, doesn't it? It highlights that stark gap between just knowing something intellectually and actually living it, experiencing the transformation. It's a powerful case for the necessity of practice. So let's get into that practical side. What is the holistic framework for spiritual growth that the traditional masters and teachers like yourself advocate? You mentioned, Sadhana, that dedicated, consistent practice is the essential ripening process. Can you maybe outline a step-by-step framework for the modern seeker, something that truly embodies this holistic nature, moving us, as you said, from the gross aspects of our being to the most subtle?
Absolutely. My core message, really, drawn from traditional Advaita and decades of my own experience, both seeking and teaching, is precisely that. Genuine spiritual realization, for almost everyone, isn't an instant download. It's not just an intellectual insight. It's the profound, cumulative result of dedicated, consistent practice sadhana, practice that purifies, calms, and prepares the mind, making it capable of both recognizing the ultimate truth and crucially stably abiding in it. This isn't just theory. It's a very practical, step-by-step framework. It addresses all aspects of our human existence, moving systematically from the gross, our physical body, our external environment, to the subtle, our mind, our heart, our deepest consciousness.
Okay, I'm ready. Lay it out for us.
All right. Here's how I break it down. A comprehensive framework integrating the wisdom of the masters, but also tailored for the unique challenges we face today. First, and this might surprise some people, we begin with the physical foundation: health, diet, and sleep. It might seem mundane, maybe too earthy for a spiritual talk, but it's absolutely foundational, non-negotiable, really. Your body is the temple, right? It's the vehicle through which you experience everything. If you neglect basic things like sufficient exercise, healthy eating, adequate restorative sleep, you are directly contributing to feelings of misery, lethargy, anxiety, depression. It's biochemical. So many people feel unwell, then they look for complex spiritual answers or profound insights, when simply addressing these basic physical fundamentals can bring about a huge positive shift in mood, mental clarity, emotional resilience.
So fix the basics first.
You can't build a stable house on a shaky foundation. Trying to meditate deeply when your body is exhausted, overstimulated from junk food, or sleep-deprived. It's like trying to drive a race car with flat tires and no fuel. You won't get far. Prioritizing physical well-being isn't a detour from spirituality. It's an essential first step on the path. Second step, mental purity. Mindful consumption of media and company. Our minds are incredibly porous. They're profoundly influenced by external inputs. And in today's world, with the constant flood of information, this is more critical than ever. If you're constantly hanging around negative, complaining, or toxic people, or if you're feeding your mind a steady diet of negative, fear-mongering content, maybe excessive conspiracy theories, or what I call hell realm narratives that paint this perpetually pessimistic, hopeless worldview, it just fills your mind with junk. Garbage in, garbage out.
Creates inner static, right?
Exactly. This external negativity creates internal static, making it almost impossible for the mind to settle into peace or clarity. I remember in my younger days, I was really deep into conspiracy stuff, very negative news cycles, and it fostered this constantly critical, often depressed mindset. I was always looking at the world with judgment, thinking everyone else was just blissfully ignorant. Making a conscious effort to move away from that negative content personally led to a profound, undeniable positive shift in my whole outlook. Curating your mental input is now as vital a spiritual discipline as any formal practice. Protect your inner environment. Third, we move to ethical action, mindful speech and karma yoga. The power of conscious speech is immense, often hugely underestimated. We need to strive to speak lovingly, truthfully, only what's necessary. Avoid harsh tones, critical language, gossip. Before you speak, maybe ask yourself, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it helpful? If you do need to offer criticism, can you do it constructively, lovingly, like you would to a cherished family member you genuinely want to see flourish? This simple practice alone can dramatically change your relationships, reduce so much internal conflict, and cultivate real inner peace.
And karma yoga fits in here too.
Yes, this naturally leads into karma yoga, the yoga of action or selfless service. And this isn't just about occasional volunteering. It's a profound shift in mindset regarding all your actions. Instead of doing things primarily for me and mine, for personal gain, recognition, or reward, you start acting as an instrument of service to something greater, call it God, the universe, the collective good, whatever resonates. This practice profoundly purifies the mind because it steadily chips away at self-centeredness and our egoic attachment to results. It subtly rewires your brain, shifting gratification away from just the outcome towards the pure joy of contribution itself. Selflessness becomes its own reward. Fourth, we have mind training, meditation to build focus. Now, we know the ultimate truth might be no one here, nothing to do, conceptually, but for the egoic self, the reality is a distracted, restless, undisciplined mind is a primary root cause of unhappiness, anxiety, and suffering. Our minds are constantly pulled by desires, fears, endless thought streams, making true contentment really elusive. Meditation serves as a practical, essential tool. It trains the mind to be focused, calm, concentrated. It develops this laser-like ability to focus when needed, and also the ability to relax that focus into quiet stillness when not.
The quiet room thing?
Right, Blaise Pascal famously said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. It's an inconvenient truth for our busy world. But learning to truly sit in silence, even for just 20-30 minutes daily, training your mind to be present, it can resolve so many life problems. It reduces that constant pull of distraction, those incessant desires, the habit of mental wandering. A trained, focused mind can find peace and even engagement in tasks that used to feel boring or tedious. It transforms your whole experience of life, from endless striving to mindful presence. Fifth, and this is absolutely crucial, heart opening. Bhakti yoga, or devotion and surrender. This engages the heart because ultimately love really is the answer. Without an open heart, all the spiritual understanding can remain cold, dry, purely intellectual. This practice involves cultivating a profound sense of devotion. Now, you can view God as separate, a personal deity, that's one way. Or, as is common in Advaita, you can view this entire reality, this whole manifest universe, as God, or as your own true self appearing in different forms. It's about cultivating a state of deep surrender, a humility towards the universal intelligence that orchestrates everything so perfectly. The planets, the seasons, the growth of a tiny seed. An intelligence that takes care of us with unfathomable wisdom. It means cultivating genuine gratitude. Gratitude for all blessings, big and small, and yes, even gratitude for life's hard lessons, seeing them as opportunities for growth and deeper peace, rather than just problems or obstacles. If love isn't present in your heart, if you can't connect to that universal compassion, spirituality can't truly flourish. And finally, the sixth step, the ultimate inquiry, Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge or self-inquiry. This is the path that leads directly to the realization of your true nature as Brahman. In Advaita, Brahman is the supreme ultimate reality, unchanging, infinite, the ground of all being, the what is behind everything, the singular non-dual truth. The fundamental statement is Brahman alone is real, the world is an appearance. And the key insight, the great utterance is Tattvam Asi, that thou art, meaning you are that ultimate reality, Brahman.
That's the peak, the goal.
That's the goal, the direct, unshakable realization of your true identity. But, and this is the crucial link back to everything else, truly understanding and intuiting this profound truth, including the mechanism of Maya. Maya is often translated as illusion, but it's better understood as the creative power by which the one Brahman appears as this diverse world we experience. Truly getting that requires the long path of preparation. It requires everything we've just discussed. Without a purified, calm, focused mind, from karma yoga, raja yoga, ethical living, mindful consumption, and without a heart open through devotion and surrender, bhakti yoga, these profound truths of jnana yoga often remain just intellectual concepts, words on a page, devoid of transformative power. They don't become a lived reality.
So they all work together. It's not pick and choose.
Exactly. The beauty of this comprehensive framework is that all these practices are deeply interconnected. They're encouraged to be done together, synergistically. They form a holistic approach to spiritual growth. And here's the really important part. Spiritual practice isn't meant to feel like a burden forever. Eventually, it becomes profoundly enjoyable. It becomes a natural extension of your lifestyle, something you look forward to. There's a wonderful insight in the Bhagavad Gita that captures this perfectly. It talks about different kinds of happiness. It says, roughly paraphrased, happiness in the mode of goodness is like poison in the beginning and nectar in the end. Happiness in the mode of passion is like nectar in the beginning, poison in the end.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Mode of passion, mode of goodness.
Happiness in the mode of passion, in modern terms. That's chasing desires, instant gratification. Constantly consuming stimulating but ultimately unfulfilling content. Seeking quick fixes, immediate pleasure. It feels good right away like nectar. It gives you that fleeting high. But ultimately, it leads to misery, dissatisfaction, an endless cycle of wanting more. It's like poison in the end. In contrast, the spiritual path, the path of goodness, it might feel difficult at first, like poison in the beginning. It requires discipline, effort, maybe facing uncomfortable truths about yourself, changing habits. But because you're engaging in practices that align you with deeper truth, with universal principles, it ultimately leads to profound, lasting peace, deep contentment, genuine happiness. That's the nectar at the end. You won't be asking, when can I stop doing this spiritual practice? You'll be asking, how can I integrate this more deeply? Because it becomes the source of abiding joy, a natural way of living.
So the sign of progress isn't necessarily dramatic fireworks, but a growing sense of inner peace.
Precisely. The ultimate sign of true realization isn't usually some big, flashy event. It's often a subtle yet profound shift, a state of constant underlying peace, a kind of non-preference where you're not constantly needing things to be different, and the ability to find peace in the midst of problems, not just by avoiding them. Of course, you should act skillfully, avoid problems where you can. But if you can't find peace even when challenges arise, then you're not fully established in that realization. If you still feel intense anger, profound irritation, or deep annoyance as a pervasive state, that's a clear sign the full picture hasn't been realized. Those strong negative emotions usually come from a deep sense of separation, from wanting reality to be different than it is, and then feeling frustrated or pained when it doesn't match our preferences. I can share from my own path. I used to get very angry, very sensitive to criticism, hold grudges for ages. Now, through consistent practice over many years, maybe I just experience little bumps of annoyance that pass very quickly. It shows that continuous spiritual work is a lifelong journey towards deeper peace.
The progress is real, it's tangible, it's transformational. So, to bring it back, if you find yourself intellectually agreeing with no one here, nothing to do, but you're still experiencing significant suffering, frustration, or a lack of deep, abiding peace in your daily life, it's an unequivocal indication that the complete practical path, the full sadhana, is not being followed. The wisdom of Advaita, like any profound spiritual teaching, is meant to transform your entire being, body, mind, heart, actions, not just your intellect.
Wow. That's an incredibly clear, practical, and frankly, quite demanding framework, but also hopeful. This deep dive has really, truly illuminated that crucial difference between just seeking an instant intellectual aha, which sounds great, but can lead to bypassing and actually embracing the dedicated, holistic path of traditional Advaita. We've seen how the wisdom from the great masters like Nisargadatta and Ramana and the practical steps you've outlined all point towards this genuine spiritual ripening process, one that actually yields lasting peace and authentic transformation, not just a temporary high or clever concept. So what does all of this mean for you, our listener, as you reflect on your own approach, maybe your own seeking? Are you looking for those quick short hits, the ones promising immediate relief without the work? Or are you perhaps ready to embrace the more comprehensive, sometimes challenging, but ultimately transformative process that leads to genuine, stable, and lasting peace and happiness? The choice and the effort that follows, well, that's always yours.
And if there's just one final thought I could leave you with today, building on everything we've touched upon, perhaps it's this. If love is not present in your heart, truly, deeply felt, expressed in your life, then perhaps spirituality in its deepest sense is not for you, at least not for now.